Greetings viewers, and welcome to my first ever science communication video. If you watch any of my videos on my gaming channel, you'll notice that I sign off with a particular adage: the dose makes the poison. But is this just a random phrase I've pulled out of thin air, or is it actually true? Does the dose make the poison? We'll get into that in this video. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer: this video is not medical advice. As someone who has handled a very long list of poisons, some of which were extremely toxic, while others were hardly toxic at all, I always endeavour to limit my exposure as much as reasonably practicable, regardless of the toxicity. Obviously, I take more steps with more toxic chemicals, but still try to limit your exposure as much as possible. This is not about trying to figure out how much poison you can handle. Before we get into verifying or debunking the maxim, we first need to address what the dose makes the poison actually means. The phrase expresses a foundational principle in the field of toxicology, specifically the concept of dose response experienced by biological systems on exposure to toxins. It is a condensed version of the original maxim published by Paracelsus in his third defense: all things are poison, and nothing is without poison. The dosage alone makes it so a thing is not a poison. Paracelsus was asserting that every substance will have a dose at which a biological system begins to exhibit toxicity, and increasing the concentration further will increase the toxic effect. Additionally, the inverse is also true. Decreasing the dose of even the most lethal poison will reduce the toxic effect, eventually becoming harmless. So, was Paracelsus correct? You probably won't be surprised to hear that the truth is more complicated than the maxim makes it seem. If you're after a one-word answer though, it would probably be mostly. If Paracelsus was completely wrong, he probably wouldn't be regarded as the father of toxicology, and this video probably wouldn't exist. That every substance has the potential to elicit an acute toxic effect in a biological system is well established, albeit it is sometimes impractical for a biological system to be exposed to sufficiently high doses to become toxic. The dose-response curve is not only utilised in toxicology to model acute toxicity, but also more broadly in medicine to calculate safe and effective doses for pharmaceuticals. This leads us on to why Paracelsus was so interested in the dose-response relationship of poisons. He believed that some toxic substances, administered at safe doses, might hold the key to treating some of the terrible illnesses plaguing 16th century Europe. This probably sounds familiar, as it essentially describes how pharmaceuticals work in modern medicine. As I mentioned, everything is a poison if used incorrectly, but a few substances administered at the right doses can treat most illnesses that plague humanity. So far, everything's looking pretty good for the old adage, right? Well, let's have a look at some of the exceptions that make it a little bit less reliable. First, we have intraspecies variability. Even within a single species, the dose-response curves can vary considerably. Such variation is particularly strong between life stages. Mature adults are generally far less susceptible to toxins than developing children. Then we have the chronic effects that many toxins have. The specifics are well beyond the scope of this video, but very generally, substances capable of causing a chronic toxic effect will damage or otherwise interfere with the biological system in a way that can't be fully recovered. This contrasts with an acute toxic effect that is immediately catastrophic but leaves no lasting effect if the biological system survives exposure. Repeated exposure to chronic toxins is particularly concerning as the damage accumulates. It's important to note that acute and chronic toxins are not mutually exclusive, and it's common for a poison to exhibit both. A particularly well-known group of chronic toxins are the heavy metals. Of the millions of known substances, a few are known to exhibit higher acute toxicity in humans at lower concentrations, while very rare, these substances definitely defy the original idea behind the dose makes the poison, albeit in a somewhat ironic dose-dependent manner. Ultimately, the dose definitely makes the poison, most of the time. But life is wonderfully complex. There are almost always cases that defy even the best proverbs. Still, I feel it holds up very well for a 5-century-old concept. I also like to think that the adage can be applied in a broader, more philosophical sense. That treating yourself sometimes isn't so bad, as long as it's in moderation. After all, the dose makes the poison.